Well, everybody knows the Zimbabwean voice now, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful voice, that one. One of unity, one of togetherness, one of peace, one of love, you know. That's the way forward. Oga, Oga.
From the African Highway Podcast Network, I'm Dumi Mabena, and this is Zimbabwean Voices, the show where we focus on Zimbabweans that are doing great work to shift the Zimbabwean narrative for the better. For this episode, for episode 2, we got a chance to interview my friend Axcil Jefferies, who is a Zimbabwean race car driver, and he is really Africa's leading driver in motorsport. And I learned so much from this particular episode. I actually had to write down notes that I think I'll touch on, which I'll share to give you a bit of context around why I think this interview was important. So, firstly, representation. When we look at motorsport in a global context, there are not many people of color outside of Lewis Hamilton that are really exceeding and excelling to the fullest in motorsport. And Axel's literally right up there on a global stage. And I think it's important from a representation perspective because when you look at little kids, often they say, kids, you become what you see. And in the African context, I feel as though motorsport is highly underrepresented. And I think looking at Axel's journey and hearing his story, we get a sense around, what that journey even looks like. Being a person of color from Zimbabwe, trying to blaze a new trail. So that was the first thing. The second thing I took away from it was, the power of support from your family and the power of sacrifice. Often you see, of course, a person shining the light and really excelling, but you don't really fully appreciate the amount of effort and sacrifice and belief, quite frankly, that it took from people, in your corner to be where you are. And I really got that through the interview that I had and conversation that I had with Axel. And then lastly, I'm not sure if you guys have read a book called The Alchemist, but when you listen to Axel's story, it's a quintessential hero's journey. It has all the highs and lows that make a great story. And I just hope that it kind of sheds light on what it means to be an African blazing a new trail, inspiring a new generation of people to follow in his footsteps. Enjoy. But basically, the general context is like, how hard it can be. Like, for example, like you and I, not hard, but you and I, of course, I live in Johannesburg, you live in, whether it's the UAE or Germany. And you get to the stage where you almost become like, it can be easy to become detached from Zim in many ways. But especially like with yourself, you fly the Zim flag through racing, and every day you literally have to put that badge on your chest, which is like a really positive thing. But when you go on Google, you go on your phone, often it's, politics and economics, and nothing beyond those two things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I thought it would be good, I think for two reasons, to like look more about your journey. I've seen a lot of videos about, just tidbits, but no like detailed steps around actually how you got there. And I think it's important for like parents and kids who'll be listening to be like, oh, if I have a kid who's a good karter, maybe I can follow that footstep,
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what I want to do. So appreciate the time, man.
No worries, man. Let's make it happen.
Cool. So firstly, how are you doing? Like, what's been happening? I know, of course, you've had a lot of changes recently, but what have you been up to these days most recently?
Yeah, well, obviously my career has changed quite a lot from where it was, let's say 10 years ago, when we knew each other quite well and used to see each other a lot. The focus has changed completely. So before I was chasing Formula One and the Formula One dream, whereas now I'm racing in GT cars in multiple championships. But it has been, very exciting. Let's say lots of things have changed, lived in lots of different places, and it's been quite a journey to get to where I am now. So many things happened that were completely unexpected. So it's put it this way, I'm super happy where I am now, and I'm kind of just excited and looking forward to seeing what happens.
Cool, man. And in the context of racing, of course, there's so many different tracks, if I can call it that. So of course, there's like you mentioned the Formula One dream, right? Where does GP lie in the spectrum? If that makes not in terms of levels, but in terms of the pathways and the different spectrums, if that makes sense.
Sure. So I'll explain it to you fully then. So let's say when most kids start in motorsport, ultimately the big attraction is Formula One. You know, that has the most following. It's the hero card of motorsport. And generally for that, you start off in karting. And from karting, you go to Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, and then finally Formula One. Okay. Obviously, in Formula One, there's only 20 Formula One cars on the grid, so 20 drivers. So very limited opportunities.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the single-seater route or Formula route is it's really a lot depends. It's financial. It's a financial game. It depends how much backing you have, rather than talent. Of course, the top five, not. I would say the whole field in Formula One is talented. To drive those cars is not easy at all. But for sure, there's quite a big difference between the top 10 in Formula One compared to the guys
else.
Exactly. Whereas generally in GTs, there's a lot more opportunities. By no means am I saying that the drivers in GTs are better than Formula One. 100% any Formula One driver can jump into GTs and be directly at the front. That's for sure. But there's certainly a lot more opportunities and it's a lot more achievable and attainable. And generally, your career is a lot longer in GTs. You know, you can normally drive GT cars into your early 40s. Okay. Now, in terms of the career path, it's more or less quite similar that you start off in go-karts to learn the basics. And then there's so many different options you could go to gain your experience. But ultimately, the things at the top would be GT3 racing, and let's say the ultimate dream is Le Mans. So LMP1 cars, LMP2, GTE, etc. There's a lot of manufacturers involved in GT racing as well. And it's a lot more relatable to the general public because when you see the car, you can immediately understand what kind of car it is, you know.
Right, this is this brand. Oh, cool.
Exactly. I mean, they just visually look the same, or not even, they don't look the same, but you can have an idea of what car it is, but nothing is the same compared to the road car. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am at the moment. I race in GT3 for Lamborghini, and I also race prototypes in LMP3. I've done quite a bit of racing with Porsche as well this year. We won Dubai 24-hour. We raced in Asian Le Mans with Porsche. And then I'm just starting quite an exciting journey now with Ferrari in GT Open in GT3 as well. So that's the nice thing about GT racing.
It's very broad. It's really broad. Yeah.
And you can make so many contacts, whether that's with manufacturers, teams, sponsors, and I feel it really helps set you up later on in life. Whereas when you're in Formula racing, it's purely focused on your sport and your performance. But then when you finish, you kind of, you have nothing to fall back on. Whereas I feel GT racing opens doors for you and it helps you meet a lot more people, I feel.
Did you feel, that's fair. Did you feel, I don't know if the word is conflicted, if I can call it that, but as you mentioned before, the big goal for any child who, I think maybe not any, but a lot of children that are watching motorsport is the pinnacle, which is Formula One. And as you mentioned as well, I know I've had many conversations with you about this and other races as well, it's not even about talent, really. Everyone's talented to a certain point, but it just becomes about funding and money. So I guess the question I'll ask was, did you feel conflicted when it got to a point where maybe backing became a constraint and you can say, well, I now have to pivot this way, as opposed to this initial goal that I had in my mind? Did you feel like some sort of angst internally or not really?
No, because for two reasons. One, I'm doing what I love, which is motors. I'm racing at the highest levels. I'm getting to travel the world. I'm driving amazing cars. working with great people. So I'm very fortunate. I feel I'm living most young guys' dream, you know. So from that side, for sure, I'm completely happy. And then on top of that is when I stopped in single seaters. So I got to Formula Two, and then unfortunately we didn't have the backing to go further. I actually stopped racing for quite a long time. I stopped racing for 3 or 4 years. And in this period, I tried everything to get back in a seat, but I just didn't have the backing at the time. So I had no opportunity. And honestly, I kind of lost faith and hope that I would race. And it got to a point after, let's say, 2 years of trying everything. And when I say everything, I mean it was all I was living and working toward, was trying to find a seat in motorsport. That in the end, I said, you know what, Axel, this is not happening. Rather than being depressed and upset, live your life, carry on with your life, and open yourself up to other opportunities. There is something else other than motorsport. So that's kind of what happened. And then when the opportunity came completely out of the blue, of course, I grabbed it with both hands. And it was completely unexpected. And it's crazy because I went from fighting to find a seat to a small opportunity coming that opened so many doors for me. And now I'm doing so much more than I could have ever imagined. So to answer your question,
no.
I'm super happy.
No. I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that part in terms of those 3-4 years in the wilderness. But what I want to do is take it back. Of course, typically as a child, there's so many different. We tell kids they can do anything. Like you can be this and you can do that. But then really, the older you get, it gets very narrow. So I always find people very interesting that really have different career paths, if I can call it that, whether it's musicians or athletes or motorsport, athletes as well. Because I feel like, and I think specifically in Zim, because not many people do it or walk the journey. I think many people kind of do the conventional thing and go to varsity and what have you, and then, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So for me, I think it's really important to kind of take it back and then just get a sense of the steps that so we can track what that journey was like for you. So from the beginning, I know like we see a lot of like athletes that perform at the highest level. Their parents are heavily involved in their careers. Was this something? Where did this even start? And how did it kind of snowball into where it is now?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, my parents played the biggest role out of anyone or anything in my career. Obviously, I grew up in Harare, but my father used to race at a very amateur level in Zimbabwe. And I guess through that, watching my dad going to the track with him, I kind of caught the bug. And I remember.
Where would you go? Was it Donnybrook, or was that motorbike? Donnybrook.
Donnybrook was the main one, and then there was also a circuit in Bulawayo, which I forgot what it's called. Forgive me. But so those were the two places we used to go quite a lot. And I remember when I was about 3 or 4 years old, I picked up a karting video, and I used to watch that almost every day. And
a video. So what is that, like an actual cassette, like a cassette?
Like an actual cassette. My dad, we went into a video store. I saw it. My dad bought it for me, and I used to watch this every single day. And I used to ask my dad constantly, like, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this." And eventually, I think for my 6th birthday, my dad bought me a go-kart. And it just started off like that. It started off as a fun hobby for myself to do with my dad. Which was great because I feel out of everything, the two things motorsport really gave us was it helped build my relationship with my father. I mean, we're always close, but I mean, in the end, us. I was with my dad constantly, and the relationship I have with my family is really tight. And it instills quite a lot of discipline in you. So I started karting at 6 years old. It was initially for fun, but again, my dad, you know what he's like. He's a bit of a soldier. If we're competing, we don't do
we do it full stream. Everything is
full stream. So
we play to win. We play to win.
Exactly. So I remember, I think after 1 year of karting, I was 7 years old. He sat me down and he said, "Okay, you need to decide now. are we going? Is this
At
something you want
7.
to
At
at 7?
7.
Is this something you want to do? And if it is something you want to do, are we going to you have to be fully committed to it, and we're going to throw absolutely everything at it? Or if it's something you want to do for fun, you tell me now, and we can carry on to do it for fun. But of course, it's not going to have his full attention, and we're not going to, it's going to be something just on the side whenever we can. And I was 7 years old. I chose motorsport, obviously.
So absolutely, I don't want to do anything else apart from this.
Exactly.
Big call. Big call.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it started, and then I guess just one thing led to another. So after we won in Zimbabwe, the next logical step was to go to South Africa, because at the time South Africa had one of the most competitive karting scenes in the world.
Question on that, I almost feel as though in this particular sport of karting, I think parents have to be supportive in a lot of sports, but in karting, it almost has to be a full all-in press from the family. Is that correct? Like it's a full commitment. It can't just 100%. Be half-hearted.
Exactly, because obviously, number one, financially, it's not cheap. And at that level of sport or motorsport, it doesn't really attract many sponsors. Okay. So you do need your family to support you, or friends, or whatever. And it takes a lot of time, because if I look at my schedule now, where I feel I'm super busy compared to when I was 12 years old, it was so much busier when I was 12. You know, in karting, we used to race 30, 40 weekends a year. Okay.
Really?
And this is
just basically every weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's basically every weekend.
All over the world. And because karting is so competitive and accessible, everyone practices so much as well. So it's not just that you're racing 30 or 40 weekends a year. When you're not racing, you're practicing. So of course you need your family. You're on my side, it was my dad that was there. Of course, my mom, of course. But yes. My dad was there with me at the track all the time, you know. So he played a vital role in my career, 100%. And it's clear that I wouldn't even be close to where I am now without him.
Phenomenal. So then you moved to South Africa, right? And so I want to touch on that. But then what are we doing for school at this stage? So we've committed at 7 years old. Axcil has said, we're going in. School can, so what happens to school? And the reason I ask is that some people don't know, like the first person a question will ask is, a parent will ask, is then what happens to school? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Of course, it's a very hard thing to balance. I remember up until I was 12, I managed quite well. Studies didn't really drop, managed to kind of work in between my racing whenever we're traveling at nights, etc. A bit of homeschooling, and it was okay. But then when I went to high school, it became a lot more difficult, mainly because most of the schools said I couldn't miss as much school as I needed to carry on motorsport. So normal school wasn't really an option. And I had to start homeschool fully. Not going to lie, my grades and everything did drop a little bit, because as soon as we went
all in,
there wasn't as much discipline as normal. And it was clear as well in my family that my career was going to be in motorsport, and that was something I wanted to do. So it would be understood if I needed to put more focus, attention, and time into motorsport than my education. I don't necessarily regret it.
Well, it's turned out nicely now. So
exactly, I don't want to say it was the right decision, because I feel I was just very lucky and fortunate, and I've been able to go through my life now, and everything's quite great. But for sure, education did take quite a hit, and from my high school years, it dropped massively.
Fair. So I'll come back to that. So okay, and that's fair, and thanks for sharing that. So you go to South Africa, which is that's how the circuit works. You do well in Zim, then you say, okay, cool, next step is South Africa. What is that circuit there like? Yeah.
A lot of people don't really know this, but especially at that time, I mean, I'm a little bit out of karting now, so I don't know what's going on there. But I remember during that period, South Africa had won multiple world championships in karting. So it wasn't that it was a decent level. It was,
It
if
was
you
world
could do well
class.
there, you could do well anywhere in the world. Okay. So we went there, and I remember the first year was a big wake-up call because karting in Zimbabwe at the time, there was some really fast drivers, but there were 2 or 3 fast drivers. Whereas I went to South Africa, and you have a field of 30 guys who are really quick and aggressive and big teams, everything. So the first year was a shock. I mean, I remember the first race, we pitched up with my cart on the back of a trailer, which was completely normal in Zimbabwe. And then you have teams rocking up with massive trucks,
with trucks just parking.
Exactly. And we there, my dad and I, pulling my cart off the top of the trailer, you know. So it was a big wake-up call, you know. But we put our heads down, we worked, we had a couple of good results, nothing too crazy. The next year was much better. And then we got picked up by Toyota and Castrol, and they supported my career.
Castro Zim, this is Castro Zim.
No,
or
Toyota,
like
Castrol,
in South Africa. South Africa, sure.
They supported my career fully, actually, in karting. And through that, we won more or less all the classes I competed in South Africa. And from there, the next logical step was to go to Europe.
Did you ever feel like intimidated, or like, I mean, not intimidated, but first year? Because I feel like I've spoken to a lot of, I think Zimbabweans often have like a chip on their shoulder sometimes. Whereas we go into like big markets, if I can call it that, we feel a bit tentative because it's not, we haven't trained in like the world-class stage, if I can call it that. Yeah. So when you first arrived, what was the thought? What was the thought process? Where you're like, look, whatever, I'm going to just have a go and it'll be what it'll be. You know what I'm saying?
I think if it had to happen to me now at this age, yes, of course, you would go there and be a little bit intimidated and feel a little bit out of your depth. But at that age, you don't know better. I was 9, 10 years old, you know. I saw other people with much nicer equipment, nicer stuff. And I think my dad felt it a lot more than me, you know. But for me, I knew one thing: I'm coming to race. That's it. I don't care what the others have. But to give you an idea of where we were in the grand scheme of things, in karting, when it rains, obviously you're fully exposed, so your whole body gets wet. Everything gets completely wet. It's normal that you have a wetsuit, and then you have wet boots and everything, which go over your racewear so you don't get wet.
Yeah, of course.
And I remember at the time we had to make do with what we had. So I remember it started to rain. My dad said, okay, we need to do something. We can't do anything. We bought a bin bag over, bin bag over me, plastic shoes, and then kitchen gloves over my racing boot, and that was it. And we went.
Like this is what it is. It's raining, but just cross the finish line. That's all we got to do at this time.
It wasn't even just cross the finish line. We were going there to win, but we had to work with what we had, you know. And I can imagine it wasn't easy for my parents. I know it wasn't easy. So from my side, it was what it was. Obviously, as I got a little bit older, you do feel those things a little bit more. But when you're young, you don't
really care much about it.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I think you guys are showing that commitment. Then someone says, "Okay, now let's back these guys and then see how well they do."
Yeah.
And then, of course, that then snowballed into you winning everything in South Africa, basically.
Yeah. Yes, as I said, I think it was like 1 or 2 years in South Africa of finding our feet. But then after that, I was quite proud. We became the first person of color to win a national championship in South Africa.
That's huge.
Yeah, which was really nice. And again, I look back at it now and I think I still don't realize how big it was. But then
it's huge.
I didn't even think of it, you know.
Yeah,
And yeah, so it's quite.
We ever made you feel out of place, per se? To answer your question, probably not, because you're a kid. You didn't. I don't know if you remember. I was watching a thing about Lewis Hamilton this morning, and he was talking about, only kid of color on a British racetrack. Sometimes kids say nasty things. Did you feel that way there in South Africa, or not really as much?
No, honestly, let's say between the drivers that I was racing against and my competitors, there was never any racial slurs or anything like that. But then again, I do feel like our generation is a lot more acceptable to things like that. And however, my father had a lot more issues compared to what I went through. So yes, between the drivers, there was nothing, but I remember my dad having multiple fights with other fathers for racial abuse, racial slurs that they've said and stuff like that. So he was always there fighting in my corner and I could see what was going on. And yeah, of course, there were some times where I know we were picked on. I mean, even things like winning the championship. We won the championship on track, but we had to go fight in court to claim it because we were protesting things that were completely ridiculous.
Well, what were the contentious issues that they were so quote unquote claiming?
I remember, I mean, it sounds so silly now, but on our helmets, we obviously have a visor, and on the visor, we have to wear a series, the series sponsor, okay, like a sticker.
Yeah.
And I remember I wore the sticker the whole year, okay, and throughout the year, obviously you get stone chippings and what have you, so it gets destroyed. And for the last race of the year, I went to the organizers to say, could I please have a new visor sticker because mine is completely destroyed. Okay.
Yeah.
And I said, and it's not visible, so it wasn't even something for me. It was just for the series sponsors. And they said, no, sorry, we don't have any in stock. I said, okay, is what it is. Did the race, won the championship. And then afterwards we were protested that we weren't wearing the visor sticker.
And that was the thing that I wanted to discredit you against.
Exactly.
Damn. What a joke. Jeez. So of course, I'm sure your dad that's just one example of what maybe your dad was fighting like on the sidelines whilst you're doing your thing.
From his side, he had multiple issues, which I would say he did well to keep me kind of out of it and help me focus on my while he dealt with it.
Yeah. And then this time, so it looks like it works in stages. So you now go to South Africa, then you say, okay, well, we've got to the top of this mountain, and then life being what it is, you want to then go to the next mountain. If I'm correct, you went to Asia to Formula BMW, or was it somewhere else?
The next step was we went to go compete in karting in Europe. Okay. And again, it was more or less the same thing that we had in South Africa, even though South Africa was really competitive on track. When we went to Europe, it was another level, in terms of professionalism, the size of the teams and that kind of stuff. So again, the first year was a bit of a wake-up call. We didn't do bad. I mean, there was 50, 60 karts on track, but we were always in the top 10, but the higher end of the top 10. And then I remember the second year in Europe, everything completely changed. It was exactly like in South Africa. We went there, first race, straight away. We won in the wet as well in France, which we were not racing so much in the rain in Africa. So
did you have the gears? Do you have the gear in place this time in Europe?
Yeah, at this stage I was racing already. I was actually in one of the big teams with the big trucks, I had all the gear. So it started off quite well. And then from there, I think I was now 12 years old. My dad was already looking at what the next step would be, and that was to go into single seaters. And normally for Formula cars, you were only allowed to race Formula cars when you're 16. But my dad already got me to start testing when I was 12 years old in single seaters. It was quite young, but I remember, which is quite funny. They had an initial. He knew I was too young to race. Okay. But there was a course which allowed 14-year-olds to come and, let's say, find their feet, understand how a car works, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And this was based in Bahrain. And my dad was so eager for me to make the next step. He lied on the application saying I was 16. Okay. And when I was 12 years old, we went to Bahrain. Okay?
Yeah.
But the biggest oversight that him and myself had was we just thought, okay, I've been racing for so many years. I'll know what to do when I jump in the formula.
Yeah.
But I had never driven a manual car in my life. So when I sat in, I was like,
There was a clutch and all of these things.
I was like, what do we do here? And in the end, it was so embarrassing. One of the tutors had to basically completely step out of it, and he spent 2 days just teaching me how to use a clutch, not even teaching me how to drive.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
But then obviously we started testing single seaters, and I did a whole year of testing, and I managed to get permission to race when I was 14 years old, so quite young, but we had showed promise in practice and everything. So we went to Asia, did Formula BMW. We finished third in the championship. And then again, it was just naturally the same thing, step by step, we went up. So after Formula BMW, I think we raced, in fact, I had 2 years out then as well, because as I mentioned, Formula cars were very, money dependent, and we didn't have the backing after Formula BMW to continue. So I went 2 years out the car, no practice, no nothing.
What was that? I think I met you just.
That was when I had a good friend named Zimbabwean that used to keep me fit and train with
I met you
on the daily.
So what was that period like? Of course, how can I put it? Because obviously, you can feel almost in the wilderness, if you will, because you think they've been on this treadmill going up, chipping away at this big goal, and then you've got 2 years in the wilderness. What did that feel like? Did you ever feel like, I don't actually know if this is going to pan out for me, or were you just kind of having faith that at some point the next opportunity will come about?
What's very strange, and when I think back at it, is that I feel things would affect me much more now than what they were affecting me then. It's like at that age, I just had a clear goal of what I wanted to do, and I knew no better. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about my social status. I didn't care about anything. It was just racing was all I wanted to do. So those things didn't affect me, and I was able to just fully focus on my motorsport. And even when I wasn't racing, I was doing two things. I was working every day towards it, making sure I was fit and prepared for any opportunity that came, and then working to find sponsors and that kind of stuff. So I was still working in that direction. So that was fine. I would say the only point that, let's say, I lost a little bit of faith and hope was I saw what motorsport did to my family, because at the early stages, they were the ones that had to finance everything and support everything. They completely ended up selling everything, and they ended up with nothing. They lost their business, lost their house, lost absolutely everything. And I remember after 2 years being out, we were living in the UK at the time, and I saw the struggles my family were going through. And I just thought to myself, this is not fair. It's not fair for everyone to go through this for me, and to continue to sacrifice with no real guarantee. And I thought to myself, okay, I've got to stop this, because my family is so committed to it. I have to stop. And I think I was 15, and I went to my dad. I said, Dad, it wasn't the truth, but I said, Dad, I just don't enjoy motorsport anymore. And it's just not what I want. And I would be much happier if you guys could, get your life back on track and focus there instead of, focusing on my racing. And I said, it's just not what I want to do anymore. And you can imagine the response I had from my dad. I mean, I went with a good heart.
He was not hearing any of that. He was not hearing any of that.
Thank God he was the way he was, because most other people probably would have said, okay, he's throwing in the towel, I'm going to throw in the towel now as well. And
not your dad. He's really single-minded.
Yeah. And thanks to him, we didn't give up. And he made me change my mind. And
well put.
Yeah.
I was actually, do you know what else when I was thinking about before our conversation? I was thinking, we spoke about how the big constraint in motorsport is resources, financial resources. And when you look at the time where I think your parents are making those sacrifices, that's literally like when the Zimbabwean economy was tanking.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? And I think we all have our own stories, like parents. I think every Zimbabwean has this story of trying to go to school, seeing parents struggle whilst paying school fees. But I think your specific one is like you're trying to do racing, and the economy is just taking a nosedive.
And it's the
And then
most
there's your sister
expensive sport in the world as well.
in the world,
Yeah.
and then you're trying to justify investment into this.
Yeah.
Jeez. I think you're a kid. I think you're a kid for most part you don't really see, or maybe I don't want to put that assumption on you. Did you notice and say no? Actually, this is
fully aware.
You're fully aware the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the reason why at some point I felt really guilty and wanted to stop, because my family went from being big business people, having big businesses, living quite a high standard of life, to us moving from, I mean, you remember we used to live in Brook together. We had, great life, living on a golf course, to us moving to the UK and all four of us staying in a 1-bedroom apartment. Okay. And all four of us working, honestly, 16 hours a day. And that's from my parents down to myself and my sister. So, of course, I was fully aware of what it did at the time to the family.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we're there. I think, and I got glimpses of it, but I think I didn't understand like the full gravity and weight of the situation. And yeah, it's kudos to them for sticking by and kind of pushing through. But I can't imagine what it must have been like, But we eventually moved to the UK. You then say, okay, I'm going to go to the UK and maybe I can have greener pastures there. You know what I'm saying? So what was that like?
So
and what was the reason for that?
The move to the UK actually happened because at the time, so for multiple reasons, as I mentioned, I wasn't racing. Okay. And I had been given a scholarship by the MSA, the British Motorsport Association, to join Loughborough University. So in a way, it was kind of like a fallback option for myself. So I moved to the UK to go and study. My sister, who you know very well as well, she moved to Edinburgh University. So she was that side. And then obviously throughout my career, with everything that my parents did, their business kind of fell apart in Zimbabwe. So they thought, okay, we need to go somewhere where we can work and try and get back on our feet again. And that's why we went back to the UK. So all four of us were there. Sorry, I lost your question was.
No worries at all. So you're there, and we're still, even though like we're still trying to, I think everyone's rebuilding at this stage, whether it's you, your parents, you're trying to kind of stabilize.
Exactly.
But we have a base in which we can re-strategize and figure out what the next step is. So what did that look like for you after? Was it Loughborough, or was there anything beyond there? You know what I mean?
So basically what happened with us is, obviously I was getting older, but not racing. And
the gigs aren't coming. The gigs aren't coming.
But the problem is the way, especially Formula cars work. It is kind of relatable with your age. At a certain age, you should be in Formula 4. At a certain age, you should be in Formula 3. At a certain age, you should be in Formula 2. So what ended up happening was I missed a couple of years and I couldn't go back to Formula 4 or Formula 3. I had to look at Formula 2, which was crazy because the last thing
there's no training, no development.
Exactly. The last thing I drove was Formula BMW, which had 170, 160 brake horsepower, to GP2, which was 600, so it was like a huge step.
5-fold.
Yeah. But the other thing about it was, because we were now looking in that direction, it becomes a lot more attractive to sponsors, because you're racing at a much higher level. You're on the Formula One support package. So that was the direction we were working. And yeah, just like always, something came completely out of the blue. Got a phone call one day from a friend in Zimbabwe who put us in contact with someone else. And it really was completely random. And that that managed to get our career back on path for a short period. And we went to Formula 2.
And Formula 2 is just a level, just forgive my ignorance, it's just below Formula 1.
Exactly.
Do you not feel like it was almost a shock to the system? Because one, you're in this period where you're just believing, you're just having faith and belief. You're training as if it's gonna come, but nothing's coming, and then it comes, right? Then it comes, but then you're like, okay, well, it's here now, but this means I have to now get into a car that is like, I've missed 2-3 years of training, and now and also people die. People die in really, people die. Did you ever have like apprehension about say, oh gosh, it's here now? Or do you just feel like, nope, this is what I've prayed for, let's go and do it?
So when I look back at it now, it's absolutely crazy because I'm so much more experienced now. I'm so much more mature. I have, I feel so much more established as a racing driver and everything. But even if you had to tell me now, Axcil, tomorrow you're going to race in Formula 2, I'll be like, whoa, I'm not prepared at all. That I'm in a car every single week, racing at the highest level. So it's completely crazy to think I just jumped into the deep end like that. But we didn't think that way. It was what we dreamt of and what we were pushing towards. And it was a blessing. We knew, okay, this is it. You don't get these kind of opportunities. You cannot say you're not ready. You have to go all guns blazing and make the most of it. And that's what we did,
Yeah. And I know it was quite how long was that period of a GP2? Was it like 6 months, 3 months shorter than you expected or longer?
It was a little bit on and off because we went, so in 2012, we started in Formula 2, which we did, let's say, like a half campaign. Then in 2013 and 2014, I went to race in America in Indy Lights, which was, let's say, the equivalent of Formula 2, but of IndyCar. So in America, you have IndyCar, Indy Lights. In the rest of Europe, you have Formula 1, Formula 2. So I raced in Indy Lights, again, odd races here and there, not a full program. And then after that, I came back to do GP2, and it was just a couple of starts.
Tell me something on the Indy. I'll come back to GP2, but in terms of Indy Lights, what was the American appeal? So of course they must have given you a call and said, hey, we've seen there's an African racer. They must. So Americans love story. They like the idea of something new, something to contribute to the narrative, to place in the American market. What was the appeal for in you specifically, if you remember that?
It was exactly that there was an African racing at a high level, a person of color, and it was a bit of a diversity program from American Honda. So American Honda put the program together, and through that gave us the opportunity to go there.
Do you think that there's ever, would you ever, I'm not trying to make you revisit and derail yourself again, but with America being the huge market that it is, would you ever, if that call came, would you ever consider it? Or is it not a financially lucrative thing? You know what I'm saying? At the IndyCar level, though.
No, at IndyCar, I mean, of course, it is one of the highest levels in motorsport. You have Formula 1, and then I would say after Formula 1, IndyCar. So at any point in my career, I'd be excited to go there. And but now in the field I'm in and the career I'm in, it's completely different path anymore now. So it's not even something that I'm looking at. And likewise, the teams in IndyCar or in Formula racing would not look at any GT drivers. Generally, you look down the Formula ladder in Formula 3, Formula 2 to see what young new talent is up and coming. And those would be the guys they try and funnel up into F1 or IndyCar. Got
you. Okay, cool. That makes sense. I just bring it up because it seems like throughout your career, there's often points where the things that you aren't planning or expecting for that are completely out of left field and you end up jumping into them. So I put it out there to say, if that comes, remember you heard it here first, that listen.
Look, I mean, you say that, but it was something I was not looking at in the slightest. It was a dream of mine. I would have loved to do it, but it was something I wasn't looking at all. But there was quite a big push for a person of color to be in IndyCar last year, when obviously there was quite a lot of stuff happening in
with
America,
George,
racial-wise.
Black Lives Matter. You're
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So there was nearly an opportunity, and there was a lot of
Really,
movement really quickly that happened in that direction, but ultimately it never
it didn't.
came to fruit. Fruit.
But it could be a thing. Okay, but there was some energy that was kind of okay,
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly.
So we've done Indy Lights, we've done GP2. So we've got 2 gigs that have kind of kept the wheels turning a little bit, which is phenomenal given the context that we're coming in from in the UK. But now it's like, okay, so now what?
So I will put it into context for those that don't know.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, to race in Formula 2, a driver needs to bring between 1.5 million to 2 million euro per season. Okay.
And when you say bring in, what do you mean? Like just you have to have $1.5 to $3 million worth of sponsorship money ready just to deploy at
Exactly,
season.
because that's effectively how much it costs to run a car in Formula 2. Now, that can either be from sponsors, corporates, family support, whatever, but that is what is required from a driver. Okay.
3 bar.
Yeah. Sorry, 1.5 to 2 million euros. So yeah.
1.5 to 2, sure.
So it's a crazy amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we reached a point in GP2 where we had support, verbal support from a couple of people, and
Sure.
we went through with everything, but it never came through.
Sure.
And I was actually in Abu Dhabi at the time, and the team said, Axcil, we can't continue because financially we have to meet
resources.
Exactly, and things haven't, and we have to go with another driver that's willing to do this, which was fair enough. And that's where like my life completely changed, because I was 20 at the time, and 19 or 20, and I kind of walked away from the team thinking, okay, so this is definitely not happening. It's been so on and off the last 5 years of my racing career. I haven't had anything consistent. And I just said, okay, I really don't know what I'm going to do with my life now. I had no fallback option. I really didn't know what to do. So I walked away from the team, and I was just trying to clear my mind. And I was thinking, felt a little bit out of place. I felt really unwelcome there, and I didn't know what to do. And I randomly bumped into someone at Yas Marina Circuit who...
Yes, which is where in Abu Dhabi.
In Abu Dhabi.
Sure.
I mean, it's the best circuit in the world.
Yeah.
And a car pulled up next to me, said, "What are you doing walking around?" I said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't know. I'm sorry I'm walking around, but I'm actually one of the drivers." And he said, "No, I know who you are, but what are you doing walking around? Why are you not driving?" And I explained the situation to him, and he said, "No, I'm the head of the racing school at Yas Marina Circuit Experiences. You want to come to my office and we can sit down and have a chat." And had a chat with the guy, and he literally said, "So what are you going to do now? What's next for you?" And I said, "Well, I really don't know." And he said, "Would you be interested in moving to the UAE full time, living here and working with us at Yas Marina Circuit?" And I said, "Well, of course." I had no other options. 5 minutes ago, I was just thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And now you're making me an offer that's, going to change everything. And I literally started working for Yas Marina Circuit that day. That evening, I already was looking after the, I forgot who it was, but basically it was royal family from, honestly, I can't remember if it was bad. But anyway, I started working that day.
Yes.
And
you take people like around, and you take
full time.
Oh, huge.
Basically at Yas Marina Circuit, they had experiences from all levels, GT cars, Formula cars, everything. And it was one of the biggest tourist attractions in the UAE. It was very high profile. We had so many celebrities coming through, world leaders. So we did so many cool things, and I was really happy and enjoying my life in the UAE.
Tell me something on that point. I know I saw a video, like just, I think I saw a video of you and Will Smith and Jaden Smith and Trey Smith.
Yeah.
What was that like? Well, was that just like an average day at work? Like, well, just another Monday.
This is the crazy thing, is that people, of course, I shared quite a bit of on social media, but I didn't share even half the stuff we did. It was a weekly thing that we were constantly having huge celebrities, massive names that were coming through. So it was kind of normal for us. And this is what was so nice about it. You know, I loved working at Yasmin Circuit. You know, I worked with a great team. Every day we were doing something different. It was fun. It wasn't work. I mean,
it wasn't work.
Honestly,
You're like, I can't believe this is my job.
Every day. I was thinking, okay, this is in a way even nicer than racing. I kind of hit the jackpot, yeah, you know. And yeah, it was really great. But there came a point. So as I said earlier in it, initially I worked like crazy to try and get back into racing. At some point, I realized that things are not working out, and I said, I've got so many great things around me that I'm not enjoying because my mind is just here on the motorsport. I said, let me be grateful for what I have and actually enjoy what I'm doing. And I did. And I had 2 years where I felt that in those 2 years, I made up for all the sacrifices I made throughout my whole career, you know, like even silly things. Like it was the first time in my life that I had a collective group of friends that I could see all the time.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
I could finally go buy myself a car. I had never had a car in my life. You know, there were just so many small things that I could do what a normal person.
Yeah, I have an apartment, I have a job, I have a this and that. I can mates on a weekend.
Exactly.
Right.
In those 2 years, I feel like I made up for everything, and everything was great, and I had nothing to complain for, but something was missing. And
the itch still there, like, well, Axcil.
Yeah, it was an itch of, am I settling for less than what I deserve? Am I still able to compete at the level I want to compete at? If I'm given the same opportunity, because I always, in the back of my mind, I said, okay, in my single-seater career, I never had the results that I wanted or felt I was capable of, because we never really were fighting on an equal level with everyone else. We're always jumping in the deep end, and it was always really tough for me. So I always thought to myself, I said, what if we get the same opportunities? What will then happen? So there were quite a lot of unknowns. And I remember, again, I was a vital person in my career. My dad came to visit me in Dubai, sat down. Obviously, I took them. They were so happy to see me doing well in my life and career outside of racing, and to see that I have a life outside of motorsport. Well, outside of racing, I was still involved in motorsport.
Racing. Yes.
And I told my dad, I said, look, everything is I've got more than I could ever ask for, and I'm so happy doing what I'm doing. But I'm almost upset when I go to a race event and I see other people racing that I used to race against, and I'm not there, you know?
Yeah, I think I watched the video. I think I think often like it's on the BS Marina race of Formula One, and I think I saw you interviewing like Danny Ricciardo or interviewing Lewis Hamilton, and I almost felt like this weird. Even watching it, because I know you, and I know it was a very weird thing, because you're like, geez, these are the people that I should be racing against, or racing. You know what I'm saying? Competing with.
Well,
but I'm on the other side of the fence.
Example. I remember, so as you said, I was responsible for doing all the driver interviews at Formula One at Yas. And after all the interviews, there was the Formula 2 race, and the whole team that I worked with had organized that we all go and watch the race together. And of course, initially I was excited and everything. And as soon as I got there, and as soon as I got like into the suite where we were watching from, I almost started crying, and I just walked out of it, and I couldn't do it because I just felt, I was like, that's what I should be doing, and that's where I should be. And now I'm a spectator, and I couldn't watch it, and I just walked away, so it there was always, I was happy on the front, but there was always something missing. And I sat down with my dad and I explained everything to him. And he just said, well, Axel, if this is what you want to do, you need to make a decision again. And you need to firmly believe that this is what you want. And no matter what, you're going to give your all to make this happen. And I remember I sat there, I shook his hand, and we said, we're going to do this. Okay. And 2 days later, I had a seat in GT racing. Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Literally.
What do you mean?
Literally.
So you said this is it, and you said like this is what's gonna happen. Whatever that looks like.
Exactly. We're gonna start racing again. My dad asked me, "What do you want to race? What do you want to do?" I said, "This is." There was basically the championship called Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and it was coming to race in the Middle East for the first time. And I thought to myself, I said, well, Dad, this would be amazing if we could do this, because I've been living in the UAE for so long. I've been on these tracks working. I know the tracks quite well. If we could get the opportunity there, that would be amazing, because I feel like we can be competitive and showcase ourselves. So we said, okay, this will be a good first step. Let's see what we need to do to make this happen. Called a couple of teams, and obviously the first thing was, okay, it's going to be X amount, which you need to bring with your sponsors or whatever. And thought, okay, we're kind of back to square one, yeah, because I have nothing to put towards my seat. So, okay, thanks for the info. We put the phone down. And then 2 days later, I got a call from one of the teams that I had called and said, listen, Axel, so basically how Super Trofeo works is it's 2 drivers per car, okay, because it's endurance racing. Sure. And they said one of the drivers doesn't have a teammate, and we're looking for a fast teammate. Would you be able to drive? I said, well, of course, but I don't have. And they said, no, we're not after budget. We just need a fast driver. And I said, okay, I'm down. And we went. First race, put it on pole. We won. We won the Middle East Championship. And then after all that success, they said, okay, can you continue with us and go to Europe?
There's no training, Axel. No formal training in that particular car. Or
in that particular car, no. But what was really great about the work I was doing is I was in a racing car almost every day. And not almost, I was in a racing car every day. So I wasn't driving Super Trofeo, but in those couple of years not racing, I ended up learning and progressing so much more than I did throughout my whole single-seater career. I got so much seat time, which is why I said my work was crazy, because I was doing what I love and getting paid to do it. I was basically getting paid to practice, and
which you didn't get before. Which is because remember it was tough to get the sponsorship to even train before. Now you're training and you're getting paid to do it, which is like, I can't believe this is
a crazy thing. I mean, the cost of doing one day in GP2 was 25,000 euro. Okay, so we never did any practice, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting paid every day to take people on hot laps. So it was a completely different, different way of thinking. So we won the Middle East Championship in that. Then the same driver and team said, okay, can we continue into Europe? And we went into Europe. In the first race, we actually won as well. We put on pole, won. Just missed out on the championship. We lost the championship by 1 point. We finished second. And then it just snowballed from there. The next year, I got a 5-year contract with one of the teams with Lamborghini. And through that, we went Super Trofeo and up to GT3, which is more or less the pinnacle of GT racing. And yeah, we had a lot of success in different championships that again opened so many doors. And now, from, as I said, from not racing, from doing nothing, I'm doing multiple championships, multiple different cars, and calendars unbelievably.
Backed out, booked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So that's phenomenal. What a journey. Congratulations. I know how long it's. I think I feel like whenever I've had opportunity to spend extensive time with you, it's always in the in between phases.
Yeah.
We're in between gigs.
Yeah.
And it's always like, oh gosh, I don't know what's next. But like, look, it's worked out okay. It's worked out okay.
Worked out better
You know?
than I could have hoped for. Honestly,
You know?
I'm really happy and fortunate to be doing what I'm doing now, and so grateful. And the one thing I remember the most is I look back in the years when I wasn't racing, and I thought to myself, I did so much, but I didn't enjoy myself. I was so stressed, and obviously I now I only do it because I want to win and I want the results. But I was just so focused on that, and I looked back and I said, okay, I'm not racing during the period I wasn't racing. I'm not racing now, but I can't remember even one nice memory from my motorsport. I said, so if I ever get the opportunity to race again, I want to enjoy myself, because I know now that it can stop at any point. So I said, if I ever start again, I want to enjoy it so I can look back later on in my life and really be proud and happy of what I've done. And I've come into motorsport now, having fun, enjoying myself. Of course, I'm still working even harder than what I was
of course.
back then.
Sure.
But I'm having fun, and the results are there, and everything's going so much better now that I'm flowing with things compared to before, when I was, holding on to every opportunity,
stressed.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm more glad. I'm so happy that it's worked out the way it has. So you're still a young man in the grand scheme of things. You aren't 40s, or not. That's not to say anyone that's listening is 40s gonna be old. What I'm saying, in the scheme of racing, you're still a young man. I watched an interview of yours, and you said one of the most important things with yours was like one of the big things. I think you said setting goals, keeping the faith, and just kind of believing. So what goals do you have now? But do you have any goals beyond this, or are you just right now just taking each and every moment as it comes and just letting it flow?
A bit of both. But before I go on to the goal thing, there's something I would like, let's say, the listeners to know, because I feel like it's so important. And it was something I was asked a while ago. I remember I did an interview and someone asked me a similar kind of question about goals, and but it eventually led to, what would you tell your younger self now, after going through what you've gone through? And it would, as cliche as it sounds, it would be to really believe that anything is possible. Because I remember I was racing and I had the goal of what I wanted to do, but it was so far away. It was so far away that I almost felt it wasn't attainable. It was just nice to say, okay, I want to have a career in motorsport. I want to do this, I want to do that. But it was almost too far to believe that it could happen, that I thought, okay, it's not. And honestly, probably now, if I look back at it, had I known that what I'm doing now could have been possible, I for sure would have worked even harder, and I would have put even more time into it. So regarding goals, I would say really to set no boundaries on anything, and really go for what you want. But to your question, yeah, there are a couple of things I want to achieve still, or not a couple, a lot of things I want to achieve, whether that's ticking off and winning some big races. I mean, this year I won my first 24-hour race, which was massive, and I won it in Dubai, which was really nice, because Zimbabwe is obviously where I grew up and home, and the flag I represent, but the UAE has almost become like my second home. So it was kind of nice to win on, let's say, a little bit of a home soil. And in the way we did it as well, which was quite special. So there are a couple of other big races that I would like to win. I mean, naturally, the one I've been working on quite hard lately is to win Nürburgring 24-hour. Haven't had the luck yet, but this year we were amazing. We put it on pole in the dry, in the top 30 shootout. We were second overall, and Nürburgring is really, it's the toughest track in the world. It's 25 kilometers long. There's 180 cars on the grid, best drivers in the world, with really tough conditions. So it's stuff like that. There are multiple races like that. I want to compete in Le Mans and hopefully win it as well. And there's a couple of other things that I would want to achieve. So for sure, there is still a long list of things I want to do.
Phenomenal. And I think the two things I want to end off with, you could have, maybe the first thing I'll ask is on that point that you raised around anything is possible. I think for me, the most important, I think anyone can learn from that, but to a young Zimbabwean kid, all we have is Donnybrook and that place in Bulawayo that you talked on. So you've traversed this journey. Do you truly believe that these things are really possible? Like if there's a kid who wants to, I want to be in Formula One day. Do you truly believe that is fully possible?
100%. Of course, nothing's easy. Okay, whether that's in motorsport or whatever field, it's not going to be easy. But 100% anything is possible, because speaking just from experience in motorsport, what we've been through, there have been so many opportunities and things that have happened which were completely out of the blue that I could have never planned or never put together in any way. And I look at some of the guys I competed against in South Africa who had so much natural talent and were really world-class drivers. And I didn't believe and felt like everything was too far away and gave up on the dream completely. And never made it any further than karting. And when I look back and see, let's say talent-wise, we were more or less the same. Financially, and the opportunities they had were even more than what I had, but they threw in the towel and gave up because they thought it was impossible. So 100%, I think if you're willing to sacrifice and give it your all and your family's fully behind it, anything can happen.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Thanks for that, Axel. And then the last question is, you could have either gone, do you ever feel not conflicted per se? I know you could have either flown for the UK or you could have represented Britain or Zim. And there were times where you would think like, geez, a lot of these issues that I'm kind of facing with regards to funding and things of that nature and access to facilities might not have happened had I just chose to train as a British driver as opposed to a Zim driver. When you look back, would you change that, or are you kind of happy with the decision that you've made?
I'm fully happy with the decision I made for multiple reasons. One, the financial side of things is the same for every driver from every region. It's now that I've been through it, I know that everyone struggles. Okay, so from that side, that wouldn't have changed anything. The other side of things, it's so nice to be able to give back to your home country where you grew up, and gives people something to be proud of. Okay. And yeah, I mean, it's the other thing, it's completely different. There are so many British drivers on the grid. It's been a huge positive for me being Zimbabwean and being someone from Africa. It's something new. It's something that manufacturers are able to sell. It's definitely made me stand out compared to me competing under the British flag. So I'm quite happy with my decision to always stay under the Zimbabwean flag.
Awesome. And then there's one more story I want you to tell us. There's a story you once told me about, I think if you remember the story, I think about a street kid. So maybe if you remember the one I'm talking about a street kid back in UK, I think before you tell it, I think it really embodies how everyone wants you to win. Everyone really, really wants you to win, because if you win, we win. And the further you go, the longer the trail that you can and the footsteps that you can leave so that someone can walk in there. So maybe touch on that story, because I think was just amazing. But yeah.
No, but thank you for reminding me about that, because I had completely, I hadn't forgotten about it, but it's something I hadn't thought of for a long time. But
yeah,
now when I think of it, it means even more to me than what it meant then, because I'm a little bit older and a little bit more mature. But I remember when we were trying to put everything together, we kind of set up a GoFundMe page to try and help the dream, to keep the dream alive. And there was quite a lot of media attention and press around it. And we managed to get the ball rolling. And I remember I'd just come back from one of my races abroad. I went for an interview. And on my way home, I stopped at a traffic light, and there was a street kid that walked to my car. And naturally, I was expecting him to ask for some money, food, or anything. And I was just getting prepared to pull out my wallet. And as I pull out my wallet, I see his hand come into my just into the window, and he's holding money and he's giving me money, and I'm like, what's going on here? And he says, Axcil, we're so proud of you, and we know the struggle you're going for. Yes, this is all I can do to support it. Here's $1. Can we put towards your program? We're so proud of what you're doing for our country. And I remember I was in the car with my mom, and my mom just started crying, and I mean,
man.
it was quite special, and obviously didn't take it. But,
Of course. But I think it's small, but I think it represents like a big idea, because you won't even think that you'd be reading a newspaper. Obviously, I'm sure most moms can read, but you wouldn't think he's reading the newspaper and looking, and he says no. But I think it's important for me, even without a home, that Axcil goes and is successful.
Without food.
Without anything. It's still important that this dollar goes towards supporting Axcil, because I think it's something I believe in. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah, it's extremely powerful, and I'm humbled, and I never ever thought that. Up until that point, I never really thought I had an impact on people, or felt that people were following my career. I knew we had fans and everything, but I didn't know people were following me and wanted success for me that much. So of course it was touching, and you realize at that point that, okay, there's a bigger role that I have to play. It's a lot more than just my sport and what I do. You end up becoming an ambassador, and you have to look a lot further than just yourself.
Do you think about the idea of legacy? Like, does that factor into your thinking, or is it just like, look, right now, all I want to just do is do my best, and what happens after I'm done will be what it will be? Or do you think a lot about legacy?
I think it's way too soon, and I haven't achieved enough to think about a legacy or anything like that. I think, maybe if I ticked off everything in my goals, then maybe I can think about that. But right now, there's still so much more to achieve before I can start thinking about stuff like that. Fair
enough. Ax, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been fun. It's been fun for me. But man, thank you.
No, likewise. It was great to chat.
Lobuchaga uripiko